If you still wake up and hear a faint voice in the distance and think that Kugisaki Nobara is not dead, you might be on some high copium. But since you're not alone in this delusion, I'm here to tell you that you're not crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, Nobara is still alive, as she has the most important role in the story left, causing the death of Sukuna. Yes, Nobara's cursed technique is total hacks, making it the final key in bringing down the King of Curses, where she will be the one to create an opportunity for Yuji to finally give Sukuna a taste of his left-right goodnight. Now, you might be wondering to yourself exactly how this will happen. Well, that's because her ability can actually harm the soul. This was foreshadowed in a fight against the special grade curse Mahito in chapter 125, heavily injuring him with this broken ability, even forcing Mahito to admit that aside from Yuji, she was also his day one. But the biggest foreshadowing to this is in chapter 222, where Sukuna said that his last finger was hidden by Satoru freaking Gojo himself. This finger will be the downfall of Sukuna with the help of Nobara, together with Yuji and Megumi. Everything will come full circle with these characters, where Gege has depicted his favourite theme of loneliness throughout his series, and each of them has their own answers on how to live with it. Sukuna is the embodiment of true solitude and the strength that can come from it. However, the teamwork between our gang is what will prove his jujutsu is a lie. And in all of this, Nobara will be the nail in the coffin to finally bring it to light. Wait a second, I want to ask you guys a question. Don't you wish you had access to all this exclusive JJK merch? You do, right? Give it to me! Well, sadly, they're all unobtainable and only found in Japan. Now, that's where Zen Market comes in. By using Zen Market, you can buy anything from over 10,000 Japanese stores, including Amazon, Rakuten, and Mercari, or even shops like the official Jump character store and Animate Online. From there, Zen Market will send it straight to your door. It is that easy. For example, you can get your hands on the original Japanese versions of JJK's latest volumes way before they release in the West. Wait, you can't read Japanese? What kind of weeb are you? Well, don't worry. Get yourself some epic figurines like this instead. In fact, you can get anything from any Japanese site by simply copying the item link and pasting it into the Zen Market search bar. What's more amazing is Zen Market has a special promo from the 1st of December to the 5th, where you can get 10% cashback in Zen points from all the items you buy from Rakuten. There is a cap of 2,000 points per item, but these points are literally worth their amount in yen, which can be used for international shipping fees. It's absolutely free to register, and by using our promo code BALLSDEEP, you will be given 740 Zen points. Now, where were we? From her introduction in chapter 4, Nobara comes across as a crude but headstrong girl thanks to her upbringing in the village. However, despite her unrefined personality, she still cares about her beauty and thinks that her face is sacred. On top of that, she values her strength as a jujutsu sorcerer. Speaking of which, her curse technique is a traditional one, based on Japanese mythology of waraningyo rituals taught to her by her grandmother, but she herself is not even a bit ancient. Rather, she considers herself quite modern. All these contradictions basically sum up her entire character and story, as she is full of dichotomy. Her prickly start with Yuji was nothing but a short-lived difference. Even though she was the only female in the group, Yuji and Nobara quickly became close to the point of sharing a singular brain cell. After all, they both came from some far-off place instead of Tokyo where they led solitary lives, so behind this jokester exterior, Yuji and Nobara began to understand each other. Whilst Yuji was raised without parents and had to accept that his grandfather, the only role model in his life, died alone, Nobara being alone was her choice. She was brought up in a village filled with people, but she chose not to get close to them. This difference between the two is highlighted when, after killing Choso's brothers Eso and Kechizu, Yuji asks Nobara about her feelings on killing something instead of exercising it for the first time. As we already know, Yuji had previously killed the humans Mahito had transfigured, but that did not make him feel any less awful about killing the brothers. In fact, he was incredibly depressed since he had seen Eso cry for his brother. However, Nobara is not driven by emotions. Unlike Yuji or Megumi, to her, thinking about the distinction between killing and exercising something is a luxury, since there are some things you can't avoid as a jujutsu sorcerer. What's more, she tells Yuji that she really does not care about people telling her what's right or wrong if they don't matter to her, which is why she will do what she has to without feeling guilty. In fact, she resembles Gojo's philosophy of choosing jujutsu for selfish motives the most in the whole trio, as Nobara opted to become a sorcerer in order to leave her village and not to save people. Nobara knows that her job is not her life, which is why she only holds herself to the standards she sets. Why? Well, because she only has a handful number of humans she cared about, which was due to her upbringing in the village. Nobara believed the villagers were judgmental and unwelcoming, which was confirmed when her friend Sayori was ostracized for being different. Sayori was just a child who had moved to the countryside with a family, but rather than trying to fit in with the village's people, she and her family stood out. As a result, Sayori was also seen as an outcast, so her house was vandalized, which pushed them to move out and go back to Tokyo. In this way, Nobara had seen experiences firsthand happening to her friends in the village, which shaped her personality. Being from a family of sorcery in a place where it's very uncommon, Nobara felt different from the other villagers, hence why she pushed herself away from them, and only chose to be close with outsiders like Sayori and Fumi as she resonated with them, which is a hint at why her Jujutsu ability that will kill Sukuna is known as Resonance. Nobara's loneliness was filled by Fumi and Sayori, but when Sayori was chased out, the loneliness returned tenfold, making her time in the village unbearable. She realized that, just like Sayori, Nobara couldn't lend her energy to just anyone and let them occupy a position in their life. The village people started appearing crazy to her, as if she was the only sane one. Hence, she made the decision to leave and choose a risky life, as she only had a few open seats in her soul to give out. All of this tells us exactly why Nobara was coldly assessing Megumi and Yuji at their first meeting. But what she didn't know when she chose this option was that she would run into some even crazier people. Nobara believed that loud people trample all over everyone's lives, but after meeting the boys, she realized that sometimes it was nice to have people who resonate with you, and it wasn't that bad. These are the thoughts she left Yuji at a supposed death in chapter 125. While she was fighting Mahito, Nobara came across a clone of the cursed spirit in a nearby alley, quickly recognizing him as the patchwork face curse. As she already knew that Mahito's power impacted the soul, she carefully avoided his hands whilst trying to attack him. Thus, she engaged in the ferocious fight with Mahito's double, but what's crazy is that she managed to injure the original as well. Now this is massive, because Nobara is the only person other than Yuji or Sukuna who could hurt Mahito. Basically, by hitting a nail directly into the double's head and activating resonance, the original Mahito's soul would receive the impact. Without even touching Mahito, Nobara managed to use his double as a medium through the same technique she hurt Choso's brothers with. After this, Mahito himself admits that Yuji isn't his only natural enemy, as the Girl of Steel can attack his soul as well. What's more, Nobara had also concluded that unlike the original, Mahito's double could not use idol transfiguration on others, making him a very easy target for her. This drove Mahito to an insane idea of killing two birds with one stone. Literally. He suddenly started running towards his double in order to swap places with it for two reasons. One, to take advantage of Nobara being off guard about his ability, and two, to kill her in front of Yuji to crush his soul. Yuji realized the danger a bit too late, and Nobara ended up taking a direct hit on the face from Mahito. This ultimately was the catalyst Yuji needed. Even though Megumi was just as close to him, Nobara understood him at a deeper level. She openly cared about Yuji, something that means a lot to a person who is destined to die. Losing Nobara to his worst enemy as well, after already witnessing Nanami's death, left a deep wound on Itadori. His resolve completely shattered, and he found himself unable to continue fighting further. He simply could not forgive himself because he had vowed to protect and save a lot of people, but he kept killing innocents and losing his loved ones. Against their wishes, however, Yuji was entrusted with a curse to carry their wills out, accept his true self, and take on their share of suffering. He did not need to look for meanings in their death, as Todo stated. But is Nobara really dead? Of course not. She's one of the OGs. Plus, there are also a few clues to Nobara coming back. Number 1. In chapter 124, Mahito himself states that he couldn't even kill Nanami with just one hit, wondering what would happen with Nobara. And number 2, we did not see the wound on Nobara's face fester, as she covered it with her hand until it burst open in chapter 126. People in the community even theorized that in order to stop the attack from actually killing her, Nobara inflicted an injury onto herself, taking the small chance of maybe surviving through this method, as she knew how Mahito's technique worked. It's not an out-of-the-box idea, because Todo also cut off his hand to stop idol transfiguration from spreading in chapter 133. And then lastly, number 3, the final reason for Nobara coming back is in chapter 127. Arata Nita, a first-year student at Kyoto High, states that he had finished treating Nobara, and even though she did not have a pulse, nor was she breathing, she was not 100% dead. Nita took her and withdrew to get her more treatment because he felt that there was still a chance to save her, as it hadn't been too long since she received the wounds. He literally stated healing her isn't impossible and it's not a 0% chance. This means her survival depends on whether she has brain damage or not, because Nita's ability prevents decomposition and stops injuries from getting worse. On top of this, Gege left Nobara's fate too vague despite bringing her up multiple times. For example, after reuniting with Megumi in chapter 144, Yuji asks him about Nobara, only for Megumi not to say anything, whilst Yuji simply just assumes the worst. Even further, to show us how she mattered to Yuji, we saw how horrible he felt at just the thought of Hana Kurusu being Nobara's replacement. But if she has a chance of being alive, why did Megumi not say anything to Yuji? Firstly, he didn't want to get Yuji's hopes up in case it didn't work out, but secondly, he knew that Sukuna would be listening attentively and somehow try to use this to hurt Yuji. And ladies and gentlemen, a huge hint further comes from chapter 236. Upon his death, Gojo sees an afterlife full of his old mates, as we see people he has lost over the years like Riko Amanai, Geto, Nanami. However, during this sequence, Nobara is nowhere to be seen. Like, even this guy who killed Gojo was there, but not Nobara? Really? Rather than thinking that Gege simply just forgot her, let's address the bigger question. If Nobara is alive, would it make sense for her character? Well, losing part of her beauty and youth, which Nobara is so proud of, was something we could have seen coming. If she does come back, she will not have an eye and will have permanent scars on her sacred face. After all, the reverse curse technique simply cannot work on damaged souls. But she has to survive this because she is yet to fulfill her goals and live out her potential. In a way, she has to redefine herself, since if being beautiful and dressing up is part of what makes Nobara herself, then what is she with half a face deformed or just missing entirely? It's the same principle as, are you the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest? And in Nobara's comeback, she will have the answer. She will say, nah, I'm still pretty. It's so stupid. Even without being up to the standard of a Jujutsu sorceress of having a pretty face, grace and elegance, she will be instrumental in defending Jujutsu and the world from the greatest calamity, Sukuna, by defeating him. In chapter 222, we saw that while Sukuna had consumed all of his fingers, his assistant Uraume failed to retrieve the last finger. But this was no surprise to Sukuna, as he simply stated that the last cursed object was with Gojo. He had hid the last finger in order to postpone Yuji's execution indefinitely. Now, who can use this to hurt Sukuna? That's right, our girl Nobara. Using the same ability Resonance that she used against Mahito, she can give Yuji and the others an unprecedented advantage. Resonance is reliant on a connection with her opponent and needs a medium to work, like her straw doll or a fragment of anything directly related to her enemy, such as Mahito's double. Once she has these, she can establish a connection with her opponent and injure them in an unlimited range. This means that having Sukuna's finger, even just one, is plenty for her to deal insane damage to him. Looking at it holistically, in the latest chapters of the story, the abilities of characters have all revolved around the soul, be it Yuji's ability to soul swap, or even hurt souls, Maki's split soul katana, which can cut right at the soul of any target, Higuruma, who can bring out the sins of the soul to be judged, or Takaba, whose technique can bring about resonance with the soul of his enemy too. As we already know, body and soul have been a huge element of Jujutsu Kaisen, and Nobara's ability being one of them comes as no surprise, as even in chapter 128, Mahito admitted that her technique was the primary reason his soul health dropped to 40%. This makes Nobara the perfect surprise attack, which will make even more sense once the secret behind Yuki's research on souls is revealed. Remember how Gojo said that he has some things to sort out after being unsealed? Well, Nobara is part of this plan. Since Gojo has an acute sense of how events will unfold, he has always made preparations, for example, asking Yuta to come back. So thinking out this plan with Nobara at the center with the last finger of Sukuna makes complete and perfect sense. Guys, he's still gonna win, alright? This panel wasn't a lie. You see, he will win through his students. Sukuna versus Gojo is still going on, alright? Just trust me, alright? Gojo, I miss you. Anyway, this result of Nobara having a major hand in defeating Sukuna Sukuna will be sort of a soul tug of war with Yuji using his left-right goodnight punches to strike Sukuna's soul, whilst Megumi, being inside, will finally be convinced by Yuji's talk no curse technique to regain his body. To raise his spirit from the pit of despair, Nobara has to hold down Sukuna's soul with her resonance so that Megumi can even be reached in the first place. Nobara defeating Sukuna will finally break the expectations and mental barriers she still possesses from the village. Since cursed techniques are a reflection of your personality, and Kinjaku said that your techniques reflect your world, like Higuruma having an ability related to being a lawyer and Gojo having Limitless to represent his boundless ability, we can say the same for Nobara, as it represents the dichotomy of her character. Whilst her technique is a doll being controlled by outside forces such as social expectations, she herself refuses to do so. She usually does not care about anyone or their opinions, but can go as far as needed once she establishes a connection with someone, which is Yuji in this case. They are accomplices in crime, which is why she has this huge role to play and fulfill her destiny. Ultimately, the trio will showcase that loneliness can be answered with reliance on others, and someone like Megumi, who currently signifies the epitome of darkness, will be the foil to Sukuna's belief. Megumi being saved by his friends and them working together is the exact future that Satoru freaking Gojo had predicted would be the answer for true Jujutsu. Now, if you guys want to learn more about how Sukuna will lose, then make sure to watch this video on Yuji's soul swap ability.